Welcome back to Just Giants with Grump and the Cranky Fan, the best damn podcast for the best damn football team. I'm your host, the Football Grump, and with me as always is Mike the Cranky Fan. What's going on, Cranky?
What's going on, Grump? It is Eagles week. This is the week we hate the city that's 90 miles to the south of us, and we hate them even more because they're 11-1 and we are not. So the
I, we,
Philly.
we could we could hate them if they were 1-11.
That's true.
And to be honest with you, like this would still be my most anticipated week. I just want to bury this team. Always want to bury this team. I was on I think this happened on I was on Entertainer's live stream, and somehow we got to the conversation of like if you could eliminate like one thing. I was like, I might buy the Eagles and just fold the franchise if I had all the money in the
That's
world.
how I feel about Florida State. I would just
I
buy the
get you see
university and just shut it down.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Or move it to Alaska or something. Do the opposite of Major League. Bring it to like the worst possible place. So this is Eagles Hate Week. I have my Always Sunny T-shirt on of Dennis. It says Untethered Rage, and that's pretty much how I'm going to feel from probably from the moment I wake up Sunday to probably the moment I wake up Monday. Right?
It's gonna be a rough day Sunday. We
It's
have
gonna
a
suck
well, we
actually.
have a family drink fest on Saturday, which should be fun. So we're gonna be probably not feeling so fantastic Sunday morning. It's gonna be crappy weather, potential for rain.
I think it's gonna
Um,
rain the whole day, man.
Oh, the last thing I saw was showers developing later in the day, so we may be able
Oh
to.
God, if that happens, I'm okay with it. I thought this was gonna be a washout.
That's the last thing I saw. I mean, if we listen to Talking Giants, we'll get the official weather forecast from
That's true.
from
I
Danny.
do
So
trust Danny King is a good weatherman.
that's right. Yeah. So, but what I saw today, and you know, this Eagle game is just the part one of the doubleheader. Myself and Snacks are going to Giants Eagles at 1, and then Knicks Kings at 6. So that ought to be a treat to see how we are both reacting to the Giant game at the Garden. So woe is the people sitting around us.
um, I think so. This is a big thing here. I just checked the weather again, and the weather.com app sucks. It's just my
Oh,
personal
just
opinion.
37 pop-ups and ads. I mean,
It's
weather.
really horrible. I just want the weather. Why I gotta pay? Whatever. Um, but it's kind of unclear when the rain's going to start. I saw there might develop into snow at some point. That will heavily impact this game. I think that if it does snow at all, I think it's going to be like a wintry mix and it'll be later in the night. But
Yeah.
if it does rain during the game, I mean, do you think that plays into the Giants' favor at all? Or do you think that plays more to Eagles? I mean, I think taking more options off the board for the Giants, like throwing the ball, making it harder to throw a ball, is always going to make it worse for us.
You see, I always look at rain the opposite way because to me, it's the receivers know where their routes are, the corners don't. So, they're making a cut and a corner might slip. So to me, and again, it's not like we're throwing 50-yard passes every play anyway. So it might be a little bit to our advantage.
That's a good point. I would say that the bigger issue is that the 50-yard bombs we do throw are like critical to the game. You look
Hmm.
back at that Commanders game, and that first touchdown drive started with a long shot. It wasn't 50 yards, but a deep shot to Darius Slayton kick-started that drive.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, the game winner that could have been was just a fly route essentially, or I mean, other people
Right.
have noted that it wasn't even a real route. It was a clear out route that DJ saw that they were not really covering Slayton at all. So,
Hmm.
I would say that the deep shots that the Giants do take are critical. Whereas if the Eagles take a lot more deep shots, if they miss on some of them, it's no great shakes, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, as far as the running game goes, Saquon Barkley popped up on the injury report today with a neck injury. Now, my first thing here is I've never seen so many neck injuries in 1 year. This is weird, right? I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it on the show before, but I keep saying it at the stadium. Leonard Williams left the last game with a neck injury halfway through. Everybody's got a neck injury. What the hell is that?
It seems like everything with the Giants are just random coincidences that keep building up. And I don't think it's anything more than just a bunch of random coincidences that keep adding up. I don't want to get into, there's no conspiracy. There's no, blame the trainers, blame the turf, blame this. I just think, you know, over the last several years, the Giants have been unlucky with injuries. They've been more than average at the worst time to the worst players, and it just keeps continuing. And I think it's just a product of bad luck.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not going to say that it's the trainer's fault. Neck injury is
Of
like,
course not.
what
No.
are you going to do? Train your neck? Like, um, it's just it blows my mind because you have Josh Azudu didn't practice, Leonard Williams still didn't practice. He's got a neck too. Barkley showed up limited this week. Um, let's stick with Barkley. Do you think that he's already had the sore shoulder? Just because it's not listed on the injury report doesn't mean anything, right? It just means it's not holding him back in practice in any capacity. But it's
Right.
still got to hurt him.
Mhm.
And I've had a theory that that's sort of slowed down a little bit of his, uh, I guess, stats the last couple weeks.
I have it on my notes right here. I have, him finally appearing on an injury report is just something that's been brewing for a while, and that's been slowing him down.
Yeah, I think so too. Um, well, I mean, do you think it has a major impact on the game? I mean, you think he plays, right?
I think he's going to play. I mean, I'm concerned that he's going to be able to play a full game, obviously. If it's something where one bad hit can, you know, irritate him and knock him out of the game, that changes a lot, obviously. So I'm kind of like on eggshells every time he's going to carry the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I am too, but at the same, but that's also going back to every single year that he's played here. He's
Yeah.
gotten hurt in some capacity. So
Well, I mean, that's kind of the decisions that have to be made after this year for a contract. It's like, you know, are we waiting for the next play where he's hurt, where he's going to be out for 2 games or half a season or something? It's a long time. And he's been, some things are his, none of it's his fault, but some things are more unlucky than others, these injuries. I guess we don't know what caused this latest thing with the neck, but his durability is my biggest concern with him.
there's something else I want to talk about him and his role in the offense. But since we're right here in this conversation on him, and we're talking durability and his impact, it's been a bit since we talked about this, a couple weeks.
Mhm.
I think that the Giants mid-season slide might factor into this. So I know we talked about this at one point. If you had to put a priority on re-signing Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, has your opinion changed at all? Does Saquon Barkley stay ahead of Daniel Jones for you, or
Daniel Jones is ahead of Saquon Barkley for me.
is that a change? I don't remember what you said
No,
last time.
I've always
Okay.
said I think Daniel Jones. I think, you know, even if it's for a smaller bridge contract for Daniel Jones, just the continuality of having him, I think is more important. I think he's proven this year that with the limited weapons he has on the outside, limited weapons at tight end, the running game is kind of going south, an offensive line that keeps shuffling who's available, not available. He's been kind of a constant. And we've said it on the show that we don't no longer feel like every week he's trying to prove himself or is he the starting quarterback? It's like he's our starting quarterback. And we don't know what the market's going to be for how much it's going to cost him, but I think within reason, I think he's absolutely the priority. And I think with Barkley, you know, not being as effective the second half of the year, and part of it might be injury related. It just seems like it's kind of the same old, and you know, money that could probably better be served fortifying more important parts on this team right now.
Interesting.
I'm not a
Um,
I'm not a big guy of face of the franchise and that type of stuff. I know,
yeah,
owners feel that way, a lot of fans feel that way. You know, we call him the face of the franchise, but I don't know.
they come and go a lot.
I also don't feel like he honestly is. I mean,
Why is that?
I don't know. It's just maybe just because he hasn't played that much over the 5 years he's been here.
That's a good point.
You have to kind of be that guy to be the guy. And he might be the biggest star on this team, I guess. But I mean, does it feel like when you walk around the streets of New York that like this is Saquon Barkleyville? I don't. It's, but even so, even if it was, teams move on if they don't feel it's in their best strategic financial interest to. So I think he's a good guy. I think it was, who cares that he was drafted second? It's been 5 years since then, but I think again with a roster that we could see because of the lack of depth, there's so many things that need to be improved on this team. I think you can make do with a running back that maybe is not quite Saquon Barkley, but is a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Shane comes from Buffalo where they were kind of drafting someone in the second round every year. And so, second round, you're still getting major talent, but it's not as major as investment, not even close to the same level
Hmm.
of investment.
Well, let me
Um,
put it this way, Grump. Thinking about what they want to do on offense, with someone with Barkley's skill set and level of skill set, is it that important to have him specifically, or can you kind of plug and play different running backs that maybe not as elite as he is, but with the potential for eliteness that he has?
so this is actually interesting. It actually bridges directly into the next thing I wanted to talk about with Barkley. It was Mike Kafka was asked, I think, by Jordan Renan about Barkley getting more involved in the passing game, and if they try to do that, or why there hasn't been as much as that as maybe we had expected or something like that. And Mike Kafka gave a response that was very much the same response that we hear from Wink Martindale about this, that, and the other thing, from Brian Dable about this, that, and the other thing. And it's the same thing, right? We look at this on a game by game basis, and, we come up with a game plan based on our opponent and how we are that week, blah, 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 blah. All that really says to me is that this year is a wash for us. We're doing what we can with our roster. That's kind of how it reads to me. It's like we look at our opponent, we know our roster isn't what we actually want it to be all over the place, and we just kind of make do with what we've got. I don't think they're really running the offense that they want to run. I mean, some of this is kind of like duh, right? But I mean,
It's duh, but it has to be
it's
stated. It
worth
has to be
it's
reminded.
worth being refreshed because they're 7-4-1. They're not some like they're not Houston where this is a very obvious you don't need to be reminded thing. I mean like, and we've even talked a little bit about maybe the coaches protecting their playoff spot rather than being the gunslingers they were in week one, where it was just kind of like, fuck it, whatever, we'll just, who
Hmm.
cares, this year's a wash. And now that they have this lead, maybe they're pulling their punches a little bit more, they're being more conservative, not being as risky. So I think it bears repeating, and it was kind of like a light bulb to me when I watched that today. Actually,
Hmm.
it's just like they give this same answer every time, and I know that that's sort of coach speak, and maybe I'm reading a little too much into that, but it says to me, no matter what specific football question you ask, it always seems to come back to we do this on a game by game basis. It's like, tells me that they don't dictate, they don't go out there and just like, this is our team, like you look at the early 2000s Tampa Bay
Well,
defense, right? And
yeah.
they played Tampa too, and that's it, man. You beat us. You
Well,
know what I
also
mean?
like
Like,
Tennessee with Derrick Henry, it's like this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna pound the ball. You stop us.
right.
Well, let me ask you
And those are
something.
just random examples, but just saying, like, they're being malleable to kind of adjust whatever tells me that they don't have an identity that they want to impose on other
Oh, of
people. Sorry,
course
what were
not.
you going to say?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you because it's obvious with this roster. But let me ask you something. Let's get past the coach speak. You are more of a film study guy than I am. You're more of an X's and O's guy than I am. Do you think they actually are doing that on a game by game basis, or are they just giving coach speak just to kind of get past the question? Do you notice so much of a variance in what they're trying to do offensively and defensively that's like they are really trying to match up with the opponent at all, or you think they're just saying that even though maybe they can't?
I think it's a mix of both. And it is difficult to tell, right? Because it's the first year. They've brought in a bunch of their guys, right? I mean, they drafted a whole bunch of guys. They brought in a whole bunch of free agents that were on the cheap. A lot of
Hmm.
them came from Buffalo or wherever, right? Um, and, when you do, like, for instance, we for a long time we were like, when is Wan'Dale Robinson going to come around? When is he going to come around? When is he going to be here? And like part of it was he was hurt, but even when he wasn't, he was just kind of like he didn't get that many targets per
Oh, there's a
game.
Wandale sighting, we'd say.
Right, exactly. And then all of a sudden there was a game, the game he got hurt, but I mean, he was the offense in that game. He was the focal point. And I don't know if that was a game planning thing or if that was they felt comfortable that he was ready. This rookie that came from Kentucky was ready for the spotlight or whatever. I don't know if it was a game planning thing or just, a growing thing.
Right.
And it's difficult to tell in that scenario. I think a lot of, specifically to the Barkley thing, I think maybe part of it is their. Okay, so Barkley's a little bit easier, right? In the passing game, why isn't he? I think it's because he has to stay in to pass protect a lot more. And like, he can't just go out there and run routes. Like, he has to be in there to check for blitzes, maybe give a chip, and then he can go out there and leak out. But he can't really, on a down-by-down basis, be a straight-up.
And that's interesting. Do you think he's been better at that? Because we've said in the past, he's not really a willing blocker, doesn't do a great job at it.
100%. He's been fantastic at it this year. In fact, if there's one thing he's been consistent at throughout this whole year, it wouldn't be his yards per game or his, seeing the hole and hitting it or his dancing in the open field. I think all that's kind of been here and there depending on the game. But the pass protection's kind of been there every game this year. And I would credit the coaching staff with that probably.
Sure.
I know he's probably worked on it really, really hard. It's certainly been probably other than his durability, it's probably been the biggest complaint about him, right?
I would say so, yes. Yeah. I mean,
so I'm sure he's worked really hard, but
it's not a sexy thing, but it's necessary for this, especially this team that's still dealing with an offensive line that's not fully staffed yet.
Yeah, and it's a shame too because early in the year they were kind of gelling a little bit, and then the dominoes start to fall, man. And this is what we talk about, right? When it's great that you can feel excited about your starting roster at the beginning of the year, but it's not going to be that way the whole year. And if you don't have depth, and it's impossible to just rebuild and get starters and depth all at once.
Especially, and then you compound that with the fact that we didn't have the money to replace guys when guys went down. It was like we were really just holding our breath that we could survive this year without having, all the injuries and things.
Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe we'll get a reprieve on the offensive line this week. Ben Bredesen keeps kind of floating around in the background there as a name that's eligible to be activated. He still has a large window. It may be against Washington that he gets activated next Sunday night game.
Let's play big picture. Would you rather hold him out for next week when it's a more important game than rush him back this week if he's not 100%?
No, I'd rather. 100% in terms of health or 100% in terms of rust?
Well, maybe just closer to 100% in terms of health.
In a vacuum, that question, I would rather hold him until he's feeling better. In the context of this game against this defense, this is protecting the quarterback here. Forget winning the game. It's making sure that Daniel Jones still has a head on his shoulders next week. No, serious though.
The fastest way for us not to make the playoffs is forget about the other games ahead. Daniel Jones has to be the quarterback of this team.
Right? Tyrod Taylor, maybe he'll win the game necessary to get us to the playoffs, but there's a no shot that we're winning a playoff game without Daniel Jones. So
I would not feel confident going in that he could win us both the Indy game and the Washington game.
No way. I'm not even confident about that right now.
Right. Yeah, exactly. In the most ideal situation we could possibly have, but yeah.
So, for me, I would see which offensive lineman, assuming he's healthy enough to play, I would get the best offensive lineman out there. If he looks like too rusty, like he might actually be a detriment, then forget that. I'm really just worried about protecting my guys here.
And I think they have a good handle on that in practice too. They could see.
I would agree. Yeah. And we might be getting too excited. I know Ben Bredesen was looking good before he got hurt, but I'm not ready to just swallow that as truth. Like he's made some big jump. It might just be like a good couple games, might have been some bad opponents, I don't know.
Right.
But nevertheless, any bodies that we get that were starters on this team coming back is a big deal. And we saw that last week with Azeez Ojulari. This is his first game back in a long time. He played like half a game, and before that was last year. And Azeez was on
Was
fire
making
last
immediate
week.
impact. Yeah.
I mean, the fumble.
Mm-hmm.
It's not even, it wasn't even just like, oh, pressures. Like, I mean, he had stats, sack, fumble. I mean, that's huge. Otherwise, injury wise, I think we're roughly where we've been most of the year. Guys kind of banged up. Josh Azudu doesn't look like he's gonna play. I'd be really stunned if Adoree Jackson played. Xavier McKinney, there was some discussion because he's eligible to be activated. There's rumors flying around about how serious that injury is. I know he had pins inserted or whatever. They've been removed. But, I mean, some people were saying that his hand was all mangled and shit. And
Ugh.
I think if he comes back this season, which I'm not definite on, he'll be wearing like a club. So
He
he's
won't
not going
be
to be...
Xavier McKinney as we know it.
No. So, I mean, I don't know. That injury really sucks. But the Adoree one, I think, is worse. So injury-wise, I think we're pretty much right where we were. We're hoping for some good news on Ben Bredeson. The Eagles are actually pretty... This is what sucks. This is what sucks. I know the Eagles are 11-1, and nothing makes me want to beat them more than them being 11-1. I mean, I'm a little jealous that Washington got to get the knockoff on them. And I don't... So we were kind of briefly discussing this. I don't want to say that they're not that good, but when I look at this team, in a normal year, I don't think that this is a one-loss team. They're very good. They're clearly the class of the NFL this year. It's just weird because, you go around the league and there's just so many teams with like 5-6 wins. I don't remember really ever seeing so many teams with like the same amount of win totals.
And even the teams we thought were going to be elite this year, the Buffaloes,
the Rams.
The Rams, Cincinnati, they all have warts. And forget the record, just the eye test. They're not like Buffalo did not take that, next level jump everybody thought. Like people were just writing Super Bowl tickets for them. Not really. Even a team like Green Bay, where people were still hanging on to watch out for Green Bay. They've been terrible. So this is not a year where we have an all-timer team or an elite team or someone we're going to remember. Oh, the
I mean, on paper,
2022.
you'd think it would be the Eagles, but just having watched them, I don't see it that way.
They may be the best team in the league, but they're not an all-timer.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I'm going to kind of still stick to right now what I said on Monday's show, where if I had to play in a playoff game, I'm still a little more afraid of Dallas than Philly at this moment.
Well, I thought you were kind of stupid. And then when I did my prep work for this, and I really had to
I'm still stupid. That's not that didn't change.
I think I agree with you. I think that Dallas's defense is playing better. I think that Philly is hurt in a lot of bad areas. So they're pretty banged up. So let's take a look at their defense really quick. Jordan Davis, the injury, that was we talked about that. It wasn't even Eagles week. That was a major reason why Washington beat them, was just being able to run right up the middle. Now, they kind of accounted for that. They went kind of balls to the wall in free agency, and they grabbed Ndamukong Suh. They grabbed Linval Joseph. They already have Fletcher Cox there, too. He's getting a little bit up there in age, but he's still a dominant force in the middle. Their edge isn't scary. Derek Barnett went on IR. They went out and they got Robert Quinn. He's on IR now. So now they're sitting there with Hassan Reddick, who's, are you shaking your boots, Hassan Reddick? Brandon Graham. I mean, Brandon Graham, he's got to be just a couple years away from retirement at this point. And they have Sweat, which is a legitimate edge presence right there, is Sweat. But that's kind of, for an 11-1 team, you'd think I'd be rattling off 3 or 4 names of guys like, oh Jesus, how are we going to block them?
Especially when the season started, we were like, this defense really scares us.
Yeah, you look. I think T.J. Edwards is probably one of the most underrated guys in the league at middle linebacker. He's been fantastic more than just this year. I'd say last year as well. Nakobe Dean he's playing kind of a different role than he played at Georgia, so he's not like this big stat machine guy at linebacker. And we can talk about the secondary. Obviously, Darius Slay, James Bradbury. Those are guys that are worth mentioning. There's not shit behind them in terms of depth at corner or at safety, for that matter.
Hmm.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is injured.
I want to do a quick plug. Just before we recorded this, I was on the Philly Mongo's podcast with big props to Rob for hosting that. We had a lot of fun. But one of the takeaways I got from that, what I thought was really interesting, was that the Eagle fan is not happy with the defensive coordinator. They complain all the time. I'm like, you're 11-1. They're like, yeah, but they should have more pressure on the quarterback, and the Philly fans just not happy overall. I'm like, well, maybe that's because you're Philly fans and you're always complaining. But it's just interesting how, based on what you were just talking about and just like that feeling, it's just like they feel like they're underachieving. And maybe that's just their expectations are better, or, they just think their 11-1 record, they should be looking the part of 11-1. I don't know. Just thought it was weird.
I think it's because their offense scores points and their defense just kind of is their defense. Do you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
they're like a point scoring machine, but the defense is just a defense. And you think about it too. It's way easier on a defense when your offense is always scoring points. I say
Hmm.
this shit all the time because the Giants haven't been able to score 30 points in forever. And I keep saying, like, complain about the defense. We can, and it's legitimate, but nothing makes a defense's life easier than already having
Playing
points on
from
the board.
ahead. How
Yeah,
about?
exactly. It
And
certainly
comfortably
makes life
ahead.
easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I would agree. Well, I mean, I don't know if I would blame the coordinator. I don't know. You know, it's not like I watched every single Eagles game and broke down everything. So,
Right.
maybe there's plays left on the field, something like that. But I look at their depth chart and I see some quality starters across the board, and I don't see a whole lot that else like scares me behind that. Like if James Bradbury gets hurt, I'm not really afraid of the next man up, who is
Well,
hang on,
we have to remember something too, that this team 24 months ago was garbage. This team was,
yeah.
remember, they were tanking in the last game of the year to prevent us from being in the playoffs. So it's not like you can completely flip your roster in 2 years and have this powerhouse 46-man roster where everybody's great. I mean, they are kind of out kicking their coverage as well in the 2 years.
So, yeah, I mean something like that. I would agree with that. If James Bradbury or Darius Slay goes down, we're looking at Zach McPherson, Josiah Scott. I mean, like what? I'm not afraid of that. Or Josh Joby. I'm not really that worried about that. C.J. Gardner-Johnson went down. You have Reed Blankenship back there at free safety. He was somebody I had. Obviously he stepped up. He made some plays already. Whatever. But I have him pegged as like a sixth, seventh round draft pick, and I stand by my work. So. I don't know, man. This is like what I'm saying here is it's a shame that the Giants are what they are right now in this moment, because I think if they got to hit Philly earlier in the year before the injuries mounted, this could have been a really exciting game for some marbles. You know what I mean? And now instead we're talking about that, just like you mentioned before. Do you hold Ben Bredesen for the more important game against Washington? That sucks. I hate
Sure.
hearing that, but you're absolutely right.
I mean, if we played Philly around that stretch when we were playing Tennessee, Baltimore, like teams that are legitimate playoff teams, it would have been a fun test to see what this team actually was.
I would agree. Um, so let me get your take here. When you look at their defense and our offense, is there anything that you see worried about? Talking about the rain possibly being a factor, being at home, we get some free towels. Anything,
Add to my
anything.
collection of towels after losses. That'd be great.
So true, man.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Is there anything that, because to me, all I really say is, I know that Jordan Davis got hurt, but to me they've plugged that hole with a couple of guys there, and we're not so good up the middle anyway. I'd rather just hit the edges. I think they're hurt there. I don't think they're as good at the edges. Their best edge guys are speed guys, and they tend to just run gaps open, if that makes sense. Like if you have Sweat on the right side trying to run around Evan Neal and you just wash him, there's going to be that huge B gap between guard and tackle to just run through, and
I
they
think
do that. So,
I think in spite of the lack of production in the last few weeks in the running game, I don't think you abandon it. I think you still have to try to establish a run with Barkley, and that bouncing more to the outside as opposed to a batting ram up front. I mean, we try that. We have to more RPO out of Daniel Jones. Have him run a little more than he has been. Um, we talked about the rain, I'm not sure if we said this earlier in the episode or before the show started. My take on the rain always is it's an advantage to the passing team, not the defending team, because receivers know when they're going to cut, corners don't, and that slight little bit of advantage, you know, could help a receiver out. So, I mean, I wouldn't all of a sudden go Eric Cornell and start throwing 40, 50-yard bombs all the time, but keep that controlled, passing game going, just
Double
short little stuff.
moves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. And like you said, zone read, RPO, get Danny moving. I agree there. Hit those edges. We gotta, we keep running the same like drag action where we have like a tight end on the right side, kind of just run a drag route across the left. Danny does the, the fake motion, the fake handoff to the right, rolls out
And
to
his
the
rolls
left.
the other way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you got two levels of guys going that way, and you kind of whatever. They've run some cool stuff off of it. The Barkley touchdown against Washington, Bobby pointed out how interesting it was. They ran that, but they handed it off to Barkley. So the linebackers all cleared out following the tight end to the left, and they yeah. It was fantastic. But at the same time, there's got to be a little bit more variety to our offense. It seems like in the first 3 plays of every drive, we run something like that. On the flip side of the ball, this is where I'm legitimately worried. Their offense is going to be hard for the Giants to handle. Now, Quez Watkins has an AC joint injury in his shoulder. He was limited. I think they might not want to play him, kind of keep him rested. I don't even want to say to look past us, but just in general, this game is not overly important for the Eagles at this point in the year.
It's about the same level of importance for them as it is for us, to be very honest.
With the caveat that they're pretty much a shoo-in at the play. I think mathematically they're in, right?
Right.
So I don't know if it's mathematically.
I think they clinch if they win this weekend. But, I mean, if not, they are so close.
Yeah.
I mean, the one stat that I kind of saw I thought was interesting is that Jalen Hurts has the 3rd lowest completion percentage of any starting quarterback when he's under pressure. So
bam, right there. That's my one. So I am worried about this team, and Jalen Hurts can move around. He can throw he's comfortable throwing on the run, on the move. He thrives on it, and he's dynamic. But to me, controlling Hurts controls most of this game. I think he does his most bonehead stuff when he is panicking. What we have witnessed grow out of Daniel Jones, and we've probably over-commended him for, but like knowing when to just give up on a play and throw it away. Don't force anything. Don't hold on to the ball. Don't try and outrun stuff you can't outrun. Just give up on the play. It's all right. He hasn't gotten rid of that yet, and that's where he starts throwing weird picks, and I don't know what he's doing. And Wink Martindale is the perfect guy to throw pressure, right?
It's exactly what we said last week.
Yeah, but I think it's a little different. Like what we said last week was about a much more inferior quarterback that I think would just be spinning.
Yeah, but I mean though, but he still has the kind of that profile for a guy who doesn't do well under pressure. So that's kind of where I'm making that correlation.
Yeah, 100% right. The other the thing is though, I want him to not know where the pressure's coming from, and I also want to make sure there's no like escape alley for him because Chris Collinsworth, I forget which game it was that he was broadcast. It was the Eagles game I was watching, but they were just kind of like,
yeah.
I don't think so though. But he was just like, I don't understand what they're just letting Jalen Hurts run. This is like that's like the one thing you can't do. Like you throw, it's a 50-50 shot. The receiver might slip, fall. You might drop it. You might get an interception, whatever. But you leave him open to run, and he'll just run through it every day. I don't understand why they're letting him run. They can't blitz in a fashion that's going to allow gigantic open running lanes for Jalen Hurts because it's gonna be worse than if they just sat back and played coverage. If they bring the pressure, and they will, they have to disguise it. They also have to try and contain him. I mean, they have to get the edges have to show up in this game. I know it's not a huge part of Wink's game plan to get pressure from the edges or necessarily the front four, but they have to keep contained. And we've had trouble with that. This is where it's good that Aziz is back, because Aziz is good at keeping contained. Kayvon's good at keeping contained. I would say even Jahad Ward is good at it. O'Shane Ximines is not. Some of the other problem is our corner number 2 is not really as good as Adoree Jackson is at keeping contained as well. So all of those things kind of factor into it, and I feel okay because we contained Lamar Jackson earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't worry me as much as A.J. Brown just being able to catch everything that goes his way.
Yeah.
Last week against the Titans, they couldn't do anything to get him to not catch the ball. Anything at all. There was one of the touchdown catches he had was unbelievable. It was just like all over coverage, and he made it look easy. It just right here, just caught it right on his shoulder, toe tap, and he had a guy literally all over him, hand in between his hands, breaking it up. No problem, touchdown. I think he had something like 11 catches in that game. It was insane. Mm-hmm. My other big point, and this is a Giants point, this is even an Eagles point, they have to learn to tackle. I don't know what happened in the last couple weeks, man, but last week, Washington would have had 0 touchdowns if they could wrap up and tackle. Both touchdowns were on poor, awful tackles where the play was dead to rights and, guys just shrugging off.
And shrugging off, not making a miracle plays to get out of tackles. It was just...
No, it's not even like a huge juke. It was just awful technique. Bad, not lining up shoulders, sliding right off, not wrapping up. They can't... That's no way to lose. If you lose on straight out talent, I can deal with that because talent changes every single year. But to lose on poor technique or just being sloppy or lazy will, I don't have much hair left on my head. I might rip it right out of my face. I don't know. It just. And the other thing too with the tackling, running backs. I mean, the plays where they have them stuffed at the line, they're still falling forward for 4 yards. That's like another thing with the tackling that's just driving me crazy. That's a little bit inconsistent. They've been pretty on and off against the run, I'll say. Overall run totals at the end of games have been not that good, but you see it in the game and it's like they stuff multiple plays right at the line of scrimmage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Prediction. Yeah, I don't feel good about this. I don't think the rain helps us. I think we need every advantage we can get. And I don't know if this is... To me, I think that the coaching staff is more worried about next week than this week. And I feel awful about this game. I'm a little upset that I'm even going. But I think this is a Philly game 35-13.
I had it 31-17. Pretty much the same reasons you do. I fear that they're going to run the ball a lot against us. If what's his name doesn't play, we're really screwed on the defense. If Leonard Williams doesn't play, I'm very, very, very concerned about that. It's okay to lose to really good teams when you're shorthanded. It's not a mark against this coaching staff, against Daniel Jones or anything. I just think, we're kind of sandwiched in between these 2 Washington games. Like you said, the coaching staff, I think, knows are ultimately more important for the short-term goal of trying to make the playoffs. I feel it's like a 31-17.
It feels crappy. We didn't really discuss Leo's availability. He didn't practice. He left the game early with a neck injury. I don't know if he's going to play. I'm thinking he will, but in what capacity? How many snaps on top of that?
Yeah.
I just, I don't know. It sucks. It sucks that we're playing them right now. I'm upset about it.
It just sucks that all these seasons seem to be ending on the fact that we have a mass unit out there, and that's what's frustrating. Yeah. It's again, we didn't think this was the greatest roster in the world to begin with, and they were kind of out kicking their coverage. But I'd like to win or lose these games on the field and win or lose these playoff spots on the field, not because we're just down to, guys who have to come off the street or guys who are not, real NFL starters. And that's what makes it frustrating. Hopefully, as
Yeah, I
we
know.
go forward,
It's always so frustrating. You're absolutely right. Here's what's the most annoying, is listening to fans of other teams pound their chests, rightfully after a win, but pound their chests like they beat. And you're like, you didn't beat the Giants.
well,
I
they
don't
can
know
go fuck
what that team
themselves.
was
Yeah.
out there. No, but I'm being serious. You don't even have a comeback because it's just like, that's not even my team out there, man. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, this guy shouldn't be playing on any NFL roster. This was an emergency. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't beat the Giants. I don't know what to tell you. But it's frustrating because that's such a wimpy bitch argument.
Well, those guys are just dicks.
But I mean, I'm being serious, though. It's just...
What's more frustrating to me? It's that it's our own fan base. And when all of a sudden you start making up, what do they call it? Like a straw man argument about, yeah. And all of a sudden now it's starting to be I don't know if I trust this Mike Kafka. It's like, what? Can we remind you who's playing and who's not playing? I mean,
Mike Kafka, I think, is a year older than I am.
Exactly. I mean, if you remember, we thought we start the season with Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard and Wendell Robinson and Kadarius Toney and all these guys, and that's not who we have to work with.
Quite frankly, so did they. Those were the guys that trotted out there.
Of course, we have one real receiving threat at tight end, Daniel Bellinger, and Daniel Bellinger is not Tony Gonzalez.
No.
We have an offensive line that this offseason we were like, okay, we have our bookends, but we still have concerns about, in the middle.
Oh, so, yeah.
And now it's on day one when we were completely healthy. Now all of a sudden with all these guys out, don't all of a sudden start, looking for convenient excuses why this team is bad or fitting your narrative that you think this team is better than they are because they start off with a better record. We've seen it with this team where, noise builds and noise, disrupts and noise distracts. And I just, this year, I still feel like this year we're playing with house money. We're in a playoff race that we never thought we'd be in, and just kind of enjoy this run. I mean, if it's not good this week against Philly, again, we have Washington coming up, and we thought the game last week is the biggest game we played in years. Well, next week is going to be even bigger. So we'll worry about this team. Let's see what happens with, the draft and all this stuff, but that's next year. Stop making excuses.
You're 100% right. Sorry, I'm laughing because I just thought of something funny. I'm not going to say it, though.
Go for it.
No, I'm not going to do it.
Go ahead.
I don't want to waste my time editing it, but that's okay. You're 100% right. You're 100% right. All of the things that are a problem now were concerns at the beginning of the year, with the exceptions of ones where we're just injury depleted, where it's a new concern that we shouldn't have been concerned about, but here we are. All of these problems with the interior offensive line was the biggest. We didn't know who the hell the left guard was going to be. Josh Azuda was raw. Ben Bredesen was bad last year. Nick Gates on one leg.
We didn't know about Shane Lemieux's status.
And Shane Lemieux, we didn't know his status at all. John Feliciano, we knew was not that great of a center. We thought maybe Ben Bredesen or Shane Lemieux might end up being the center. We certainly didn't think Nick Gates. I certainly didn't think Nick Gates was going to be anything this year. And Mark Lewinsky was like the one free agent I had some hope for, and he's been horrible. And pretty much all year. So, all of the concerns that we've had are still the problem. So to put it on Mike Kafka for not being able to coach around a bad roster or a bad cluster,
or lack of depth.
Yeah, exactly. It's silly, especially for a first-year offensive coordinator in a throwaway year. That's kind of like an experiment, throw things at the wall and see what sticks kind of situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. You're 100% right on that. That's just like casting stones to find a new thing to bitch about because it's annoying. It is annoying to be like, well, we're just not that good. It's just the truth,
I think
though.
what you need to do as fans is do a little self-evaluation on, you're looking to bail out the players in this thing and say, well, it's got to be the coach's fault. But, just take an honest evaluation of this team. There's nothing wrong with being like, this team isn't as good as I thought they were, even with the record is even. It's okay. We're not
Yeah.
grading you. We're not going to throw you off, Giants Twitter if you were wrong. But just, keep your frustration and your anger, which I don't even think is even justified, but put it in the right place.
Right. Dallas is playing Houston in what I assume is not a big enough Texas rivalry in the NFL. I mean, it really, like, there's none of that down there, is there?
No, I mean, it's kind of almost like Jets Giants. I mean, they just don't play each other that often. And have they both been really good at the same time?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. I mean, has Houston ever really been very good?
Well, they've made the playoffs,
Yeah, that's
but
true.
in
I mean,
those
that's
years, I don't
true.
even think Dallas has made the playoffs.
Were those wonky, like, Tony Romo hurt years?
I think
Maybe.
so.
Yeah, you might be right. Um, this is a Dallas win,
Yeah.
right? Without even needing to go into the explanation.
Yeah.
And there's no college football this week. There's Army Navy. I won't be watching. I don't
Wow.
care.
And the Rams just came back and scored with 9 seconds left to tie the game. Once a Gator, always a Gator. Van Jefferson. Baker Mayfield
Baker May ball.
comes back from 16-3, 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter.
We discussed this on the pod about how the primetime games this year are just garbage.
They've been garbage. Well, yeah, they went after names as opposed to good teams. I mean, again, when you're doing the schedule, the Super Bowl champs, you expect to be better than they are.
Of course.
But like, the
Russell
Chargers
Wilson's
are on way too
Broncos.
much. Denver's on way too much.
Way too much, Denver.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a wrap. So this is our second to last home game of the year. It still has not been too cold yet this year. That Detroit game was very windy, but overall was not. I mean, I think it was like maybe 30 degrees. It wasn't really like.
It wasn't winter.
Those snot frozen to face games that we've had. And thank God.
If anybody wants to Photoshop a picture of Grump and Crank with a frozen snot across their face.
There's that famous NFL Films loves showing it from the 2007 NFC Championship game against the Packers. There's like some super Midwest stereotype in the stands, which is, what do you picture, right? A guy with like he's like in
some
his...
guy's 300 pounds.
Yep, and he's like 50-ish years old. He's got a big beard, and there's like a disgusting icicle booger like in his mustache.
It's like what sunk the Titanic is hanging out of his nose.
Yeah. I would look it up and Photoshop it in, but it's actually gross, and I'm not going to do it. So, but if you are interested, it's not that hard to find.
You know what's easier to find, Grump? Our podcast.
Our show. That's right.
Yes.
SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, and of course YouTube. Subscribe, tell friends. We have a lot of awesome upcoming stuff in the off season. I don't want to get beyond the playoffs, but like ironing out some new things for the off season, now to get ahead of the game.
Yeah, some major announcements coming up. You'll be seeing your favorite hosts on lots of
all
different
over the
places.
place. Yeah. Lots of stuff that I've been working on and not sleeping. So if you've noticed my eyes get droopier and redder over the last couple weeks, it's been all work, I promise. But in the interim, we will see you at the game Sunday, and then you will see our faces on YouTube and hear our voices on iTunes and so on.
And we'll be at the tailgate, too. Unless it's raining, then we're not.
Yeah, I'm going to stop by the tailgate. I don't know if we're going to hang the whole time, though. If it's raining the way I thought it was going to rain, I really don't want to be standing outside for that.
I will not be at the tailgate if it's raining. We will be at we'll be back at the old Jameson room for a beverage, maybe.
That's correct. That is a guaranteed way for me to get a cold, is to be outside in the rain for 3 hours before I'm outside in the rain for 3 hours. So
nursing a hangover from our family hang the day before.
That's right. So, yeah. Twitter, as usual, at @football_grump, at the Cranky Fan, and we will see you guys Tuesday morning if you don't see us at the game. Until then, go Giants.
Go Giants.